Welcome to Circles Live here on Monday evening. You're so welcome wherever you're joining us from, and whoever you're watching this with. You are amongst a like-minded, like-spirited people who are hungry to grow, who are humble to learn, and who are absolutely committed to getting back to the original design for life with the absolute belief that God, who has created us, has set us up to win. And whenever we align ourselves to His word, His principles, we unlock His code of success. Through a relationship with Him, we experience the covenant of significance. Did you know that you are significant? You are part of a significant plan. And so Monday nights are about having a conversation that helps us to understand how we unlock the more that is in us. So if you're joining us for the first time, welcome. And we are going to be unpacking as part of our season of being pioneers. We are pioneers called to carve a new path. You are unique for a reason. You are unique in your makeup, in the way God has wired you, because you have a unique purpose. Okay? Just put in the chat column right now, if you're watching this live, I have a unique purpose. You absolutely have to believe that. And so what we're going to do is we're going to dive into the manifesto of Jesus. Jesus came, of course, as the king, the servant king. He came into this earth to not only teach us and show us how to live and to get back to the original design, but of course to die and to rise again, to enable us to walk once again as mankind originally did in the Garden of Eden, to walk with God and to work with God so that we can win for God. And what we've learned from Jesus and his manifesto is how to live in his kingdom. So King Jesus is King Jesus. He is the one who is the head of the church. He's the one who is the head. And when I say church, I don't mean the religious institution. I'm talking about the living stones, the people who are committed to following Jesus and to seeing his kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. And so what we're going to do is look at the manifesto. Right now in the UK, we are heading towards a general election. In fact, I believe, I can't remember the percentage now, but there are so many elections across the globe, significant elections where leaders are either going to be re-elected or new leadership's going to come in. And of course, everybody's looking for the promises of those people who are going to step into that position of authority and rulership in order to lead their country forward. And of course, as the voter and as followers of Christ, I believe it's important that we do vote, that we take our responsibility as good citizens to take time to pray and to think through the options that are available to us. But of course, what you'll hear a lot about is our manifesto, our set of promises that should we be elected or re-elected, that we will kind of benchmark ourselves against in terms of how well we're doing is based upon the promises that we keep. And so people look at those manifestos, and Jesus himself, as our king, had a manifesto. And that manifesto is the Sermon on the Mount. It's the one sermon that we have in its entirety in Matthew 5 to 7, Luke chapter 6, where Jesus outlines what life in his kingdom is all about. Both the promises that he has set before his people, but also the responsibilities of the people. Because that's what any good kingdom, any good nation has in common. There is leadership that has promises that it keeps, but also responsibilities that its citizens must live up to. And when you get both working together, you get a flourishing nation. So Jesus outlines in the Sermon on the Mount, his manifesto. And so what I'm going to do over the coming weeks, because ultimately, what we're pioneering on this planet is a pathway for his kingdom to come on earth as it is in heaven. We're creating an opening for our lives to be the differentiator. Wherever you're working, whoever you are mixing with, there's got to be something about you that is going to stand out. There's got to be something you and what you represent and the kingdom that you represent that sets you apart. Otherwise, we're in this world and we're of this world. But Jesus said that you're in it, but not of it. In other words, you've got to be present, but there's got to be a differentiator. There's got to be something when people look at you and your attitude and your behavior and my attitude and behavior and say, do you know what? They're different. They're different. There's something about them that sets them apart from everyone else. And so the manifesto of the kingdom, how we live up to our responsibilities of the kingdom, are what set us apart. And so over the coming weeks, we're going to look at this manifesto, and I've kind of given it a little bit of a different, I guess, perspective of how we're going to look at it. And so the kind of mini title for this next few weeks in our kind of season of pioneering is this. Now, when you hear this, you're going to be like, what on earth are you talking about, Gareth? But stay with me, okay? And there's some wisdom even in the title. Okay, here's the wisdom. Are you ready? And this is the title and the wisdom. It's this: never eat before a buffet. Never eat before a buffet. Okay? Anybody like buffets or buffets or buffets or however you call it? Let's just put it in the chat column like that if you love a good buffet. I tell you what, I know our kids and our family love buffets, okay? Especially around specific times of the year, Christmas, Easter. We love buffets. You know, when there's a huge array of different things that you can take from. And of course, I love all-you-can-eat buffets. You know, when you go into those restaurants where they have dishes from all over the world and it's all laid out for you, both savory and dessert, and wow, it's just amazing. But the wisdom is this: like, never eat before a buffet. Buffets aren't fun when you've already eaten. Buffets aren't fun when you've already eaten. I don't know if you've ever been in that situation where you may have eaten before you went somewhere because maybe you're a little bit suspicious, of whether there was going to be enough food or whether there was going to be something you liked. How many of you, come on, let's be honest, and I've got to be honest, when it comes to weddings, I'm particularly like this. You know, when you've had the wedding ceremony and then you've got that huge long gap of like 5 days between the ceremony and the reception, I'm like, let's go to McDonald's, let's fill up, because we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know. I've been to weddings when the food has just taken hours, and like literally I've been eating the arms of my children just to kind of stay. I haven't actually, that's not literal. I've literally been famished. I've been desperate to eat. And so I always kind of make sure, like, let's stock up, let's eat something. But have you ever done that and then regretted it? Like, have you ever done it? I've done it many times when I've actually been like, I'm so glad that we ate something because it's been forever. Or maybe the amount that you get is not that much. But have you ever done it where you've eaten and then you've gone into an all-you-can-eat buffet, or there's so much food and you're like, oh, I can't believe I ate, because what I ate isn't as good as this. And you know you need to have a good appetite to enjoy a good buffet. Well, where's this going, Gareth? Well, we're going to look at the first part of the Sermon on the Mount. And this whole aspect of never eat before a buffet is how I would maybe use a little bit of a fun analogy to describe the Beatitudes. Now, the Sermon on the Mount, let's get the context here. The Sermon on the Mount is where Jesus, there's the crowd before him, but then he calls his disciples and speaks to his disciples. And it's really important that we understand this, because Jesus is laying out his manifesto not to the crowd, but to those who have chosen to follow him. Because there were the crowds that Jesus ministered to, the crowds that Jesus would impact and influence. But not everybody in the crowd moved from that believer to a builder phase that we've talked about previous. Not everybody made that transition from being a consumer of miracles to being an active participant in the miracles that Jesus would go on to do, and Jesus would go on to instruct his disciples to carry out. And so he was specifically speaking to his disciples. In other words, those who were committed to being in his kingdom, because Jesus knew not everybody in the crowd would be in the kingdom. Everybody had the opportunity, but not everybody would take up that opportunity. So the manifesto only applies to those in the kingdom. Just like we could talk about the manifesto, I don't know, of Spain right now here in the UK, but to be honest, I could be interested in it, but it's not going to affect me. It'll only affect the citizens of Spain. Well, the Kingdom of Heaven manifesto only affects the citizens of the Kingdom of Heaven. So let's go into the Beatitudes and this whole idea of what Jesus is talking about, because the Beatitudes are quite confusing. I don't know if you've ever read the Beatitudes. It's a set of directives and also promises of what it's like to live in the kingdom. But at first glance, it doesn't look like the glossy magazine and pictures that says, do you know what, you've got to come and visit this nation. You know, you've ever looked at a brochure or been online, and they always show you the best pictures, don't they, of the places you can go and visit, the places that you can stay, because they want to entice you in. But at first glance, Jesus isn't painting through the Beatitudes a picture that immediately makes you think, ooh, I want to go and visit the kingdom of heaven. So let's read Matthew chapter 5. Now, when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. Jesus said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." So the first one we're going to look at is, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Now, let's look at this, because Jesus is saying, or appears to be saying, it's good to be poor. Why would God want us to be poor at anything? Let's face it, being poor isn't fun. I mean, how many of us love to go shopping when we don't have money? Go on, hands up. Or how many of you don't like going shopping when you don't have the money? Say, yeah, that's me. I need to have money in order to go shopping. Now, at first glance, we can look at this and think, so is Jesus saying to live in his kingdom, to be pioneers of his kingdom, ambassadors of his kingdom, we've got to be poor? Is he saying that there's some moral virtue in a state of poverty? Well, no, he's not, because let's look at what Jesus says about money. Jesus warned against the love of money, but he's not advocating for material poverty. This is not a poverty of the physical or the material. Jesus is talking about poverty of the spirit. You see, it's only when we realize that we are spiritually bankrupt before God that actually we're in a place of being blessed. Now, let's go back to my analogy here. You are blessed when you are hungry and you have an invitation to an all-you-can-eat buffet. Yeah, that's a state of blessing. Like you know that you're hungry, but yet you know there's lots of food, quality food, quantity of food. Like in that combination of hunger but provision is a state of being blessed. Just like we've said, the worst thing is to kind of be already fed on low quality food and yet going and invited to a quality buffet where there's high levels of quantity of food. Jesus is talking about the fact that actually, the sooner we realize that we are spiritually bankrupt, in other words, the spirit is the core component of our lives. It's the part of our being where our self-image is created. It has links to our levels of self-esteem and self-image and confidence and and it links to our soul, where our appetites of assurance, authority, acceptance, achievement, appreciation, and assurance are all, and affection are all linked. The Spirit is such a key component that when our spiritual account, if I can use that analogy, is bankrupt, the bad news would be to know you're bankrupt and you have no ability to receive something into that bankrupt account. Just like it would be a negative situation to be completely starving and to have no invitation to an all-you-can-eat buffet. But Jesus is saying the sooner you can realize that you are poor in spirit, the more you realize you are blessed in the kingdom of heaven. Now, why is that? The reason why that is actually linked in the parable of the prodigal son. If you want to go read this, and I encourage you to go and read it in its full, I won't do that for now, but for those who know the story of the prodigal son, we can read it in Luke chapter 15 from verse 11 to 32. Basic synopsis of the parable is that the father has two sons, and the youngest son wants to receive his inheritance now because he believes that what he needs is out there in the big wide world. So he takes his inheritance and goes in search of the thing that he thinks he needs. And the thing that he thinks he needs is out there in position, in possessions, in experiences. It's all external to himself. But of course, he comes to the point after spending all that he has, both physically, mentally, and emotionally, he comes back to the point where he realizes, actually, I'm bankrupt, that I have nothing. He starts eating the pig food of the pigs that he is looking after because he's hit rock bottom. And of course, what he does, and the parable tells us, that he returns to the father, and the father welcomes him back, reinstates his position as son, and with that, he has full access to the riches and the abundance of the Father. In other words, he rediscovers where the source of what he really needs is. It isn't out there somewhere, it's in the home of who he belongs to. In other words, the Father. And this is the kingdom of heaven. And this is what we've got to understand, because if we set off on a journey of pioneering for God, we can do so almost with the belief that actually connected to my role of pioneering is my fulfillment. Connected to the role of my pioneering is my provision. But that isn't our source. If we set off on that journey, we can set off doing the right thing, but driven by the wrong motive. In the kingdom of God, we've got to understand that the currency of the kingdom is neediness before the Father. In other words, the moment that the son, the prodigal son, recognized his need to reconnect with the source, the Father, he was actually blessed. In fact, the parable tells us that the father puts on, a garment, a ring on his finger, and reinstates his son. And we are blessed when each day we recognize our spiritual bankruptcy. In other words, that without our connection to the kingdom of heaven, the unseen kingdom, that no physical reality, no physical experience, circumstance could ever actually meet that spiritual need that we have. The truth is that often God allows us to go through circumstances that remind us of our neediness, not because he's a cruel God. I mean, you look at the story of Gideon. Gideon, again, go read it in Judges 6 and 7. Great story, love the story, but God calls Gideon from that, hiding in a wine press, says, "You're a mighty warrior," gives him the job of leading the Israelites against the Midianite army. The ratio at the point of him being called to lead the army was 5 Midianites to 1 in favor of the Midianites. But then God gradually takes him from 32,000 fighting men to 300 fighting men. Now, why would God do that? Is that cruel? No. God is taking him through a process of identifying need. God turns up the dial on the need. Now, that would be cruel by God if he dialed up the dial on need but had no means of meeting that need. It would be cruel. Just as it would be cruel for Jesus to say, well, blessed are the poor in spirit, with no mention of the fact that actually I'm going to meet that poverty. No. Jesus is saying it's a positive thing to increase your neediness, just like it's a positive thing to go to a buffet hungry. Why? Because there's a buffet. There's the kingdom of heaven. There's the abundance of heaven and all that God has for us spiritually. God sometimes allows those journeys, and we've experienced it as a church in the last 11 years as we've been on this, or 15 years of really kind of deconstructing church and understanding what does church look like or need to look like. Principles are the same, but the method's changing. How do we start to set ourselves up so that we are going to be effective and impactful? And it has been a process of quite literally in turning up the dial on the neediness of like, God, we need you. Like, we need you. I need God today more than ever before. And that is a good thing because I'm in the kingdom of heaven, and where the increase of need is dialed up, guess what? That puts a demand upon the access to the account of heaven where there is more than enough. All you can eat. Jesus demonstrated as the Son of God. He came as the Son of Man, and he made himself the neediest man on the planet. Philippians 2 reminds us, it says this, in your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Jesus Christ, who being in the very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing. Notice that. He made himself nothing. Wasn't a victim of his situation. He allowed the situation he stepped into to create the neediness, and he took the nature of a servant, it says, and being made in human likeness, he found his appearance as a man. And look at what he went on to do. He humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Now, anybody looking at that would think, well, that's a cruel thing to do for God the Father to send his son Jesus into such a needy situation and to essentially kill him. But no. In the kingdom of heaven, what looks completely ridiculous and stupid to mankind is completely the opposite in the kingdom of heaven. When you dial up the need in the kingdom of heaven, that gives you access to the demand and supply of the unlimited, of the unseen realm of the kingdom of heaven. Because verse 9 goes on to say, therefore is because Jesus was the neediest man alive by choice, God exalted him to the highest place and gave him the name that is above every name, that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue acknowledge that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. You see, our job is to daily, in his kingdom, turn up the dial on our neediness for him. Because when we dial up the neediness for him, the hunger for the buffet, guess what? We get to eat of the quality that is going to sustain us for the pioneer journey. I can't go on this journey and live off scraps. I need to be spiritually strong, spiritually nourished daily. John 15, I need to abide in the vine, and from the vine, who is Christ, I need to draw all that I need, and that is going to form the structure of who I am and my identity. It's going to direct the motivation that I have each day to make sure it's absolutely aligned to the motivation I should have to make God look good and to make God feel good. So, never eat before a buffet. It is always good and fun when you go to a buffet and you haven't already eaten. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So, a discussion question to talk through in your circles when you meet this week. In what way have I been searching for what I need in the wrong places, like the prodigal son? I don't think the prodigal son is just about coming back to Jesus when I've been away from him. I think we can often kind of live the prodigal life or have prodigal ways in the way that we live our lives, even as followers of Christ. So in what way have I been searching for what I need in the wrong places, like the prodigal son? What need do I have to take before God as my source, rather than taking it to the world as my supplier? Okay, trust me, when we go deep into this and we're brutally honest, it is going to intensify that neediness. Neediness is good when it comes to the kingdom of heaven. And when we take that neediness, not to man, that's not good. We take the neediness to God, who supplies us. And when he supplies us, we are like a river. That supply flows to us, through us, and starts to bring what the world needs right now, which is a demonstration of kingdom culture and living. And it's going to come through you. Listen, remember, today and every day, you are a champion, and there's more inside of you than you think. Till next time, we'll see you on Circles Live. Take care.